Democratic U.S. Senate candidate Troy Jackson and his longtime romantic partner are dismissing allegations that he once pushed her almost 40 years ago when he was 19 years old. A Bangor Daily News article cites a Fort Kent Police Department report from 1988 that stated Jackson's partner, Lana Pelletier, told police he had, quote, pushed her around after he had gotten into a physical altercation with another man. Jackson admits the fight with the man, telling us in part, quote, I took responsibility for it then, and I take responsibility for it now. But let me be clear, I have never been violent with my partner, Lana, or any other woman. This happened nearly 4 decades ago, and I assure Mainers this incident in no way reflects the man I am today or the life I've led in the years since. Pelletier, the mother of their 2 adult children, told the BDN, I do not remember making the statements attributed to me, and they are not accurate. Troy and I have built a life and family together, and I know the person he has been through the decades since, both as a caring partner and father. Jackson's campaign said the incident was resolved with a $50 fine. Jackson replaced Graham Plattner as Maine's Democratic U.S. Senate nominee 3 weeks ago now.
2 people were arrested by ICE outside of the Cumberland County Courthouse in Portland. So it happened yesterday. A spokesperson for the agency says a man from Angola and a woman from the Democratic Republic of the Congo were arrested as part of a targeted operation. They say both of them entered the U.S. legally about 10 years ago and were authorized to stay for 6 months, but overstayed. ICE says the woman had been arrested on theft charges. The Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition released a statement condemning these arrests. The organization is calling on state and local officials to prevent public resources from being used for federal immigration enforcement whenever possible. We have also reached out to ICE to confirm reports of 5 different arrests made at the Portland Jetport. We haven't heard back yet.
The Maine Revenue Services building was evacuated yesterday after a suspicious package was opened. Capitol Police responded to the building on Commerce Drive in Augusta around 5 p.m., according to a news release from the Maine Department of Public Safety. Officers then asked for assistance from the Maine State Police Bomb Squad. The person who handled the package moved it outside the building and contacted authorities who cleared the building as a precaution. Through X-ray imaging and field testing, the bomb squad found no explosive or biological hazards inside the package. The Maine State Police is now handling the investigation. A number of local doctors are doubling down on their opposition to President Trump's latest executive order, changing the recommendations for childhood vaccinations.
They say they're concerned that some parents might trust the president's directive more than their own doctor's advice. CENTER Maine's Christian Harza has that report.
Absolutely not. There's no new scientific evidence to justify any changes in the vaccine schedule.
Dr. Brian Youth has been vaccinating kids his whole pediatric career.
About 30 years.
And in Maine, that is not changing, even after President Donald Trump signed an executive order changing the federal recommendations for vaccines.
There was probably an expletive or two.
Maine Medical Association President Dr. James Jarvis says he and the top brass of Maine's medical community were on a video call when the executive order was signed.
We need to, come together right away and say that vaccines are safe and effective and the best thing that we have to prevent illnesses in children.
The executive order reduced the number of vaccines recommended from 18 to 11. And it breaks up the MMR vaccine, mumps, measles, and rubella, the vaccine that was created in 1971, into 3 different shots given over 3 different appointments. Both the letter penned by 7 different groups and a release from Governor Janet Mills and the Maine CDC director solidified Maine's stance.
This will cause no changes to how we're operating and how we're providing preventative care and vaccines for kids.
But other states may change their policies and advocate less for vaccines. All the more reason to get vaccinated, says Dr. Jarvis, pointing to the recent rise in measles as a good example.
We were fortunate that when we had a few measles cases, they were very isolated, and partly that's due to the fact that we have a very high vaccination rate amongst our school-age children.
CENTER Maine political brew analyst and pharmacist Joe Bruno has long advocated for vaccines and says after reviewing the executive order, he doesn't anticipate retribution for states like Maine that don't side with the president.
Because all the states have a right to set their own requirements on vaccinations needed for schools and any other activities. So I think the state is just going to stay the course. I don't see it changing at all.
As for the fear the president's directive builds skepticism, Dr. Youth welcomes the conversations.
I love having those conversations. And to me, again, that says that families trust the healthcare system and they trust their provider as they should.
Christian Harsa, News Center, Maine.
President Trump maintains the changes his directive calls for are backed up by science. However, the Maine Medical Association encourages you to talk to your own doctor about vaccines. You can also find resources on the Maine CDC's website. In the meantime, President Trump has announced the youngest White House press secretary in history, Caroline Leavitt, will be leaving her role at the end of the month.
Yeah, the 28-year-old's departure follows those of several other White House officials this year, including Attorney General Pam Bondi and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. NBC's Alice Barr has the details.
This morning, a shakeup among President Trump's closest aides with the announcement White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt will leave her role at the end of the month. The president said to spend more time with her young children, adding she'll remain a top outside advisor. Leavitt had a baby girl in May, her second child, and posted about the challenges of balancing the high-pressure job and motherhood, calling the decision to leave bittersweet. Colleagues praised her.
She has served this president so well, this administration so well.
Her approach to the press at times adversarial, with frequent clashes in the White House briefing room. And her departure comes amid controversy over whether journalists on board Air Force One served as a decoy during President Trump's secret flight from the NATO summit in Turkey last month over concerns of an Iranian threat. It also comes as the president's approval ratings have fallen, with Americans frustrated by the war with Iran dragging on. Despite President Trump's claim Wednesday that the U.S. has total control over the Strait of Hormuz, Iran said that critical shipping channel remains blocked until its conditions are accepted. The bottleneck only adding to stubbornly high prices, with a new report putting inflation at 3.4% in July, ticking down slightly from June, but still above target, with lingering concerns about the broader impact of energy costs.
If it stays persistently elevated, energy costs do filter through to other categories. You'll see it quickest in something like airfares, where, those will move when gas prices move. But really, energy is an input to everything.
Ongoing challenges and a new search for leadership in the president's team. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
The latest Consumer Price Index report is showing a slight uptick in the annual inflation rate. The CPI, which is a broad gauge of goods and services costs, increased by 0.1% in July. That puts the annual rate of inflation at 3.4%. That's according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Excluding food and energy sectors, the inflation rate of the CPI now sits at 2.5%. Those relatively flat numbers gave investors a lot of confidence, pushing some stock market futures higher. By the sound of the closing bell, the Nasdaq had gained 143 points, and the S&P 500 had jumped 20 points. The Dow lost 21 points.